Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires, and to specifically talk about this video that Legend of Total War did. The premise of this video is to talk about how both Tomb Kings and Lizardmen are broken as a result of their reworks, updates that they got in patch 6.3, and that is certainly a major issue, specifically with Lizardmen, that the Legendary Lord AI factions are not recruiting units properly. Sometimes it can work, sometimes, but a lot of time it will break and they'll either be wiped out by other legendary lords, like you look at Warzag, or they'll just sit around until somehow the AI fixes itself. Not quite sure what's going on. It's absolutely an issue that's existed in Total War. Crave Assembly has acknowledged it publicly. They're looking to fix it, but it has affected the Beastman AI for quite a few years now. So there's many issues in Warhammer 3. But why is that so? And why am I making this video? Well, the reason I'm making this video is because it certainly stirred the hornet's nest, what Legend said in that one, and also really it touched a nerve for me as a content creator, given the things I've been dealing with for years, as someone who has been very critical of Creative Assembly. So I wanted to give my perspective on it, because I am part of the content creator program, to just make people understand the perspective and the things that we deal with as content creators. Spoiler alert, Creative Assembly isn't really the problem with content creators. In fact, Creative Assembly is quite fine if you criticize them. Don't go personal, don't attack individual developers, keep it professional. But if you want to really go hard on them, you can, and they will accept you part of the content creator program. I've been in it for 3 years now. That's not really the problem. But the big issue, and I think Legend kind of touched on this, but really the big issue, or at least hinted at it, the big issue is Warhammer 3 is broken. But why is it broken? Well, this is not something I know for certain. It's just speculation on my part, I admit. But if we look at public data of Creative Assembly, we can see that they have over 500 people hired in the company at this moment. They have 500 developers for the projects they're working on. That's a lot of people. But those people are not working on Warhammer 3. They have 3 projects, big ones. Alien Isolation 2, a historical game, and a fantasy game. That's what they've stated publicly. The vast majority of developers, as far as I can tell, are working on those projects. In fact, they're hiring even more people, so they might even be closer to 600 people in the company. How many people are currently working on Warhammer 3 for patches, updates, for hotfixes, DLC? I would be surprised if it's more than 30. And the reason I give that number is because they likely have several teams. Some people working on sieges, some people working on hotfixes, some people working on updates like Tomb Kings and Lizardmen and Kislev. But I would be very surprised if it's more than 30. Let's even go as far as saying 40. Now, the reason I give that number is because several years ago, when Forge of Chaos Dwarves was coming out, Andy Hole, who's the lead writer of Warhammer 3 and everything Total War Warhammer, he said they had 10 people working on it. Now, I'm not sure if 10 people really did all of Forge of Chaos Dwarves, or that was Andy Hole and the people that were part of his team. I don't quite recall the details, but he was doing a podcast, he was doing an interview, and he mentioned that figure. And it can clearly be seen that the people currently on Warhammer 3, there's not enough of them to really handle a game of the scale of Warhammer 3, considering how many things are broken. So yes, Warhammer 3 has a lot of deep-seated issues, campaign pacing, AI, sieges, and all that. Now, the people working on them are doing the best they can, as far as I can tell. We've gotten quite a few updates this year. They've tested sieges, they've tested AI, they've reworked Kislev, they have updated, reworked Lizardmen, Tomb Kings, and those have been improvements, genuine ones at that. But, and this is where I agree with Legend, the game is still broken. It certainly feels empty, even despite all those updates. Because, yes, those fix things, but as a content creator and as someone who has sunk almost 4,000 hours in Warhammer 3, it does really feel empty because long-standing issues aren't being resolved. Mind you, there's another factor in this. It's not that the developers don't want to, it's not that they're not aware of them, they are, or they are being made aware. They follow forums, they follow Discord, they follow YouTube content creators, they watch videos. But the problem is with what CA, with them is there's just too few of them. Because CA is devoting all of its resources, the vast majority of its resources, on Alien Isolation 2 and the two Total War games that they're working on. So I think it's a fair assessment to say that while Creative Assembly is still releasing content for Warhammer 3, and will continue to do so, how much of it, we don't know. 1, 2, 3 DLCs, I don't know. But clearly they've not abandoned the game, but they're certainly not focusing on it. I wouldn't say they don't care about it, they do, but they've got other priorities. Now, is that the right decision? Is that the wrong decision? Well, to a degree, my view on this is there comes a point with any video game where a developer should stop. And I think that we've gotten past that point with Warhammer 3. It would certainly have been nice to have gotten a new Total War game by now, as a content creator speaking on this, and gotten more DLC for Warhammer 3. It's not a great situation to be in as a content creator because we need content to create, so we need games if we're focusing on that. But I understand the logic. And mind you, this is a problem of CA's own doing because they poured vast resources into Hyenas, that flopped. Pharaoh didn't work out. SOC lit a fire under their heels. So there were a lot of things. That's why I call it the triple disaster of SOC Hyenas and Pharaoh, because it was a disaster. They had hundreds of people working on Hyenas. They spent $100 million over quite a few years working on Hyenas. Imagine if they had spent those resources on new Total War game. Hell, we probably would have had quite a few of them by now, and Alien Isolation 2, which I think they only decided to do that after they canceled Hyenas. They thought they could make the next Fortnite, that flopped. Then they put a lot of people to work on Thrones of Decay, though they fired a lot of people in the company as well. They might have gone down to around 250 people at one point. Then they hired back up. How much? I don't know. These figures, speculation, rumors, that kind of suggestions that I've seen around the internet. But but it's obviously changed the dynamic in CA. So they've kind of had to rebuild the company, shift priorities. One of the reasons Thrones of the Decay ended up so good is because they were really putting resources on it to regain the trust of the community. But then they've moved those resources to other projects. At least that's my perspective on it. So that's the problem. It's not great if you're a Warhammer 3 fan. It's not great if you would want to see these issues fixed, because with the changes that CA is making, with the updates, they just kind of feel half-cooked, right? And again, it's not the problem that the people who are doing these things don't know what they're doing. It's not because they are doing a bad job, but they're also dealing with the Warhammer 3 engine. Or not the engine. See, the Total War engine is a lot better than what we see in Warhammer 3. The problem is Warhammer 3's code. Because Warhammer 3 is not one game, it's 3 games mashed together, and spaghetti code doesn't even begin to describe it. Like, it might seem, just change something very simple, and then half the game breaks. That is a genuine thing that happens. Like, why did Lizardman AI break? Well, as far as I can tell, the reason it broke, based on things I've read about, seen, etc. over the years, the reason it broke is because CA changed the spawning system, the blessed spawnings. That change, which is not a bad one, but that change broke the AI because of its recruitment priorities. I believe CA themselves stated that in their blog. Anyway, so it is an issue. They are looking to resolve it. But that's the problem. Again, too few people, spaghetti code, because Warhammer 1 plus 2 plus 3 together creates a mess. Resources allocated to other projects. It does create this kind of situation. This was a deliberate choice by CA, and people are right to call them out on it. So I understand why Legend is frustrated on the subject, but we also got to talk about it from the perspective of a content creator as well. Because regarding the perspective of content creators like myself who are part of the creator program, it's not that we don't bring these issues up to Creative Assembly when we notice them. It's not that we don't speak up when we notice them. It's not that we don't talk about them in videos. My videos on the rework of Lizardman and Tomb Kings, well, I was very clear on the things that Creative Assembly had not fixed, the issues that do exist, the places where they screwed up. Creative Assembly is perfectly fine with that. Just don't go down the path of toxicity, don't be personal with individual developers, that kind of stuff, personal attacks. Be professional. Criticize, but keep it in the professional lane. That's essentially it. And that's not just my experience with CA. Like, I used to cover World of Warcraft. I was openly critical about the stuff Blizzard did. And I got beta access for both TBC Classic and Wrath of the Lich King Classic. That's not how publishers and developers view these things. But we're not QA testers. We're certainly not paid for it. We get access to stuff maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks in advance. Then we have an embargo date more often than not. And I'm not just talking here about CA. I'm talking in general. We get review code for a game, for a project, for patches sometimes. Depends on developer, publisher. And then we have an embargo date. Now, here's the thing. During that period, we also got to do other videos on our channels because that's important before we can talk about something. So even for those of us who work full-time, and there's plenty that don't just do YouTube content creation within the Total War content creator community, or for any game for that matter. So even for those of us who do it full-time like myself, there is a limited time we have on this subject to test things out. And with respect to the AI situation for Lizardman, as the example that Legend brought up, the whole point of the video, it just wasn't noticed as the big problem. Was it noticed? Yes, myself, other content creators talked about it, mentioned it, communicated it. But was it considered the issue? Well, not really. And the reason for that is, again, limited testing. Again, different focus. Some people focus on campaign mechanics like myself. Other people focus on battles. Other people focus on units. All that. That is how content creators operate. We're not there to test every single aspect of the game and make sure it works. That's not our jobs. Our jobs are to make content that the people who watch our channels are interested in. The focus of our channels. That's what we do. But we do catch some stuff like the Cafe and Caravan situation that Battles B brought up. I covered as well. CA fixed that before SOC even came up, if you remember that whole episode. That sometimes happened. But with the AI issue, was it noticed? Yeah, I did notice like Oxyatl standing around. I did notice like Tenowin being wiped out when I was playing Gorak, because I tried every legendary lore. I spent about 20 hours or so before the 6.3 embargo. I tried everything. I didn't notice it. I wondered what was going on. I didn't consider it a priority. That's my personal view. Because, one, I had other things to worry about. Two, these early access versions, they do have issues, bugs, things that get fixed before the full release. Or fixed shortly after. So I didn't think it was going to be that big of a problem. That's just an example, because there's many situations where you do see an issue, you flag it, or the developers just fix it. So that was my personal expectation. But apparently it's a bigger issue than I imagined. Is communication between CA and content creators good? That's a discussion I can't go into, NDA and all that kind of stuff. But it is there. We do highlight issues, and even if we don't talk with them directly, they've stated publicly they watch forums, they watch Reddit, they watch Discord, they watch our videos, or videos in general. So if there's a big issue and we make a big deal out of it, or the community makes a big deal about it, they're generally aware from what they've done over the last couple of years, really, with patches, with fixes, with problems. So that's the reason. It's not fear of Creative Assembly that's driving it. In fact, being afraid of a publisher and developer is actually the smaller concern. I'm not saying that you want to be blacklisted. That's a different discussion. But it's not the big priority. The big priority is getting views, getting subscribers, keeping people happy, keeping people engaged. And that's where we get into the real fundamental issue that content creators have with any video game, but looking at Total War right here. When you're focused on covering a specific game, then your core audience as a content creator are going to be the people most engaged with that game. Naturally, those people are going to be the ones that enjoy the game the most, not the people who are perhaps spending a couple of hours every week, but people who spend more than that, especially those spending dozens of hours. They're the ones that are going to look at content. They're the ones that are going to be interested in the details about how a game works. So if you're doing playthroughs, if you're covering units, if you're covering strategies, if you're looking at campaign strategies, that's your core audience. The problem is, and this is kind of where we fall into the trap of what you could call toxic positivity, people don't enjoy when you talk badly about a game they're playing a lot and a game you're focused on covering. It can work if you're doing a broader channel on, say, gaming news, but if you're focused on a game, then that's your core audience. Sure, it's best to reach out on that, and that's always a discussion as a content creator, but you always need to know the core audience of any kind of content you're making. So inevitably, you have that first tension point between covering things critically and the people who are most engaged, who are the ones you need the most because they're the largest viewership for that particular game. If you criticize a game like I have, like Legend has, you will always experience the same thing. And this is why in Legend's video, he says, I really don't want to do this video, because he knows the reaction he's going to get. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very negative about it, just like people have been negative about my videos on the subject of various issues in Total War. For instance, if you just search my name on the official Total War Discord, you'll see a lot of insults towards me. Now, you can say, well, that doesn't matter, right? Ignore that. Sure, on a surface level, it doesn't matter, because those people only make up a minority of people who comment, to like or dislike or anything like that. Even some of the worst videos I've done in this channel have had a positive like to dislike ratio. And the ones who actually do the worst are ones where I fall into the trap that a lot of other people have of bitterness, of anger, of frustration, because getting insults every single day is not conducive towards good behavior, suffice to say. But this is where it gets insidious. You might think, oh, just be more polite, just change the tone, etc. But fundamentally, people who like the game or like a race or all that, they will be driven away if you're just constantly criticizing or analyzing, really. I spend a lot more time just focusing on like the ins and out. That's one big problem. The other problem, and this is really where you feel the tension point as a content creator with Total War specifically, but not just Total War, a lot of different games. But if we think about Total War is not really a great game or a series to cover as a content creator because of how CA designed it, every single game in the series. Now, some of it has to do with viewing patterns, some of it has to do with how content watching has evolved. But here's an issue on that. Let's Plays have become less popular on YouTube in general, or just overall, unless you're really creating kind of persona that works with that on Twitch, or even streaming on YouTube. On one hand, you have the situation where when people watch you, they want to watch someone that's good at a game. They want someone who's really pushing the envelope. On the flip side, viewing patterns are down with Let's Plays and all that. But the bigger issue is how Total War works. Total War, in order to play it well, you have to use strategies. It's not complete min-maxing, but optimal strategies, getting ahead of your opponents, all that. And this is where Total War really fails as a video game, in general. Not just for me as a content creator, but in general. Its difficulty curve is inverted. The early game is the most significant portion. If you fumble the early game, the rest of your campaign is going to be more difficult. And on top of that, you have a player base that's watching your content, or people watch content in general. They don't want people to spend 60 turns on a campaign when they know it can be done in 30 turns. So you have that tension point and those cracks, and then you have a chasm because of the design of Total War. The vast majority of battles that you fight in a campaign are not good battles. They're very boring. Sieges are not good. The difficulty curve being inverted means that your early game decisions matter more. But the problem is, the way you overcome that is pretty damn boring to watch for a lot of people, even people who play the game. Because, on one hand, you need to play on higher difficulties. On the other hand, people don't like watching higher difficulties because it inherently relies on people pushing the envelope. Sure, you can win a campaign on 100 turns on Legendary Iron Man. That's not the point. The point is people expect more, especially these days with Let's Play viewing patterns. And when you look at Warhammer 3 and just Total War in general, it's things like ambushing, cheesing, abusing the AI behavior, taking advantage of certain unique comps, knowing, okay, I'm going to move an army here, I'm going to encounter a faction, I'll bait them into attacking me. That is something that drives your engagement down. And then there's the battles themselves as well, like sieges, and other content creators have told me this. Sieges are the worst part to ever cover in any video, on any level. Like, you can talk about them, you can do a Let's Play, it doesn't matter. People don't like watching sieges. I mean, people hate playing sieges in the game, but so that does apply to a lot of battles. Also worse, you have a tension point because the most fun, interesting battles in a campaign where there's really powerful armies, one, that battle might be decided long beforehand. You can either auto-resolve it, or your army comp in such a way that you couldn't lose even if you tied your hands behind your back. But it's the biggest spectacle, so you have that tension between spectacle, good gameplay, pushing the envelope, etc. This is why if you look at content creators that push Let's Plays, they always try and do something crazier, more insane, right? Like playing Elden Ring with, for instance, no weapons, naked, all that. But even that, you can't do an entire playthrough of that. That's not as popular. It's montage, it's editing. The problem with editing, you cut immersion because you're taking a portion of what you're playing out to make for better flow. So Total War's design is broken because there's a lot of downtime. There's like 1 in 100 things that actually happen in a campaign are exciting. Add to the inherent nature of the game that's broken on a difficulty level, it gets worse. And that's really the key point and why it really sucks to be a content creator in Warhammer 3 right now, or Total War in general. See, I like the game. I wouldn't cover it if I didn't do so, but what drives me crazy is the mental gymnastics I have to do in order to balance all of these elements out. Because it is mental gymnastics on this. Like, how much do you edit? What do you show? What don't you show? Sure, you might think a video has a bunch of very easy to record content, but there's intent behind what was recorded and what was not. Like, even just having, bringing up characters on a campaign map or starting the campaign, turn 1, just talking about things. There's actually a strategy with that. And that's really the problem for us content creators. CA is not the problem. What we're dealing with in viewing patterns, the audience we're aiming for, it's not working out. And it's not working out because the changes that CA doesn't drive enough people to come back, so we're left at that core audience. But even that core audience, they might enjoy playing campaigns, or a lot of them, but they don't enjoy watching them. And eventually just run out of stuff. Sure, 3-year-old game, right? DLC plans haven't been handled in the best possible way, but that's one of the things I would say that's really broken about Total War in general. That flow of a campaign. And it's not just broken for me as a content creator, it's broken to play it. Like, spending every single, like, ending a turn after you've gone through every single province, every single lord, every single hero, made sure they level up, made sure recruitment is going up. You can't automate it. Automation does exist in theory. It's pretty bad in practice, and it doesn't work for skills, even though it should. The nature, the fact that we have a situation where if you want to min-max your campaign, it's best to fight every battle manually, but every battle is boring as dirt, and add to that the viewing patterns. It breaks things apart. Like, I'm happy with what I've achieved with Total War, but this is a serious issue. It's sometimes better, sometimes worse with other games, but it's not just the Total War exclusive issue either, of course. If games don't have a good flow, and it's not about challenge or lack thereof, it's about the imbalance or the bad design of flow. Also worse is when you might enjoy something, really enjoy something, and you'd want to cover it, but it's not worth doing any video on that because no one's going to watch it. For instance, I actually do enjoy playing Total War Pharaoh, but it's a waste of time for me to do any video on that subject because, well, no one cares about it. That's the sad reality a lot of the times. And truth be told, it's not all on CA to fix, but I would say in conclusion, what CA can do on this subject is they need to be improving that flow. As for the player base, part of the problem here is that Total War's history is tied to a very, very bad player base. What do I mean by that? Well, toxic positivity is something I mentioned. For years, the Total War fan base, the core fan base, was always going to defend everything CA did. When they engaged in shitty business practices, when content was completely broken, when Attila came out, when Rome 2 came out, when Empire came out, or even the lead up of Warhammer, there were constant arguments between people defending them and a minority, emphasis on the minority of people who wanted better. Warhammer changed that for the better in one significant way. It's not because Warhammer 1 was so fantastic, though it did a lot. Let's be clear on this. Performance-wise, battle situation, AI even, campaign dynamics. It improved so many different things. That's undeniably so. But the more important thing that Warhammer Total War did, it flipped the player base. And not in the way you might see it referred to by, say, someone like Pixelated Apollo talking about how people just consume. This is the thing some people struggle to grasp. Just because you like something doesn't mean it's above criticism. When I used to play World of Warcraft, we would constantly roast Blizzard every single night. Every single night. Sure, there were always people that defended it, but there was a better balance between people who defended them, everything they did, and people who roasted them. It's when that balance breaks. You don't want just people constantly criticizing a project or a product, but you don't want people who just constantly defend it. If that balance is broken, then the community is broken, which has significant effects, not just for content creators, or the player base at large, but for the company making that product in general. And that's something I think CA should fix. And when I say fix, not through thinking that you can control the audience of your game, but by making a better game with a better flow, better difficulty, not having 10 different difficulty modes and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, that's one of the things that actually makes some of the best games to stand the test of time, when difficulty flow and the gameplay flow are just good. Those are the games we remember. Not this bullshit camp in a corner to take minimal casualties in an army, because if you engage them head on, you'll lose half your army, but you have 10 other armies to deal with soon enough. There, that's the big tension point right there. Do you want to camp in a corner? You can. It will work. It's also boring as dirt. You might understand what I'm talking about better now. That's all I had to say. Costin signing out.